Okay, everybody, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. We have probably about a dozen people in our in-person meeting tonight. This is our first meeting back live in person since probably January of last year or longer. I can't remember. It's been too long. My memory doesn't work that well these days. So it's a pleasure to give this presentation. It's very timely because Roger and I have been working on this project for some years. One of the things we did when we first started delving into the history of our local transcontinental railroad through Placer County is that we were interested to see the kind of industries that sprouted up as the railroad built east over the summit and into Nevada and beyond. And so as the railroad began building from Sacramento eastward, all these little sleepy little villages suddenly sprung into being with new industries that took advantage of the local transport on the railroad as the rail had moved east. And there were all kinds of things that developed, you know, the fruit industry in Newcastle and beyond, and the stoneworks in Rockland and Penryn. Those are the most well-known ones. But one thing that I don't think it really occurred to us is that there was a lime industry that developed and other stone products as well. And so this is, let me go to this first slide. This is a story of two local Placer County industries that relied on the nearby Central Pacific initially, and later when it became the Southern Pacific Railroad for rail transportation to very distant markets. The Bear River Lime Kiln is a unique and important example of lime manufacturing technology in the late 19th century. And here it is right in our backyard here in the Auburn area up in Colfax, which is really, that's really astonishing, as you'll see. So in 1866, January, a news article came out about the Pritchard Quarry. A marble deposit is discovered at the Bear River near Colfax. The marble is of the best quality and is said to be equal, if not superior, to the Italian marble of the same variety. The next year, Mr. D.W. Pritchard is the owner of a valuable quarry of black marble at Colfax. It is the first and only quarry of black variegated marble in California. Up to that point, any stone used in construction came from Italy or far afield and was shipped in. In 1874, 300 tons of marble was shipped to San Francisco from the Colfax Depot. The largest portion of this marble was used in the new mint, meaning the new US Mint building being constructed there. So one of the things that was on our minds is, are there any remnants of this unique stone in these historic buildings? And so Roger and I, we arranged to get a tour of a couple of those buildings, and we headed off to San Francisco to see if there's any stone still in place. And the bulk of the news articles mentioned the US Mint building and the Bank of California building. One other prominent building was the Napa Insane Asylum, and we decided not to try going there. So we headed off to San Francisco, and I can't remember, Roger, did we take BART in from Concord or something? Yeah, we went to Concord and took the BART train over to downtown. Our first stop was the Bank of California building, and we soon discovered when we got there that the 1906 earthquake and fire destroyed the building. As you can see, it was quite an ornate building in that artist's conception. And the fire is what consumed a lot of the structures there. And so although it was still an interesting building, there's the building on the left. It's now the Union Bank building. I'm not sure if Bank of California doesn't exist anymore, does it? But in the inside is quite nice. Down below in the lower level, they have a really well done gold rush history little museum that is worth visiting. If you ever go to want to go and see something cool, you can go in that building. It's open to the public. And down in the basement is a really interesting gold rush exhibit. Anyway, we discovered there was no Pritchard stone there. So we headed off along Market Street, looking at railroad stuff on our way. And there's the Market Street streetcars. And we headed over to the US Mint building. Well, that building did survive the 1906 earthquake. And you can see there on the left, the building is surrounded by rubble. The building stood. Roger, those stacks in the back, were they part of the mint building process? They were part of the minting process, I guess. They're no longer there now. But we had arranged, the building's owned by the city of San Francisco, and we arranged a tour of the building, a private tour through the city department of architecture or some department, I can't remember. But we got in. And we got a personal tour of the Mint building. We started in the lower levels, the subterranean level, and there were these long dark corridors with vaults and safe doors where they used to store the minted coins, and there's all the other dark passageways with stone lining. And what we discovered is that these stone walls were made out of Penryn granite. The historic descriptions of the building describe granite from near Rockland. Well, it turns out it was Penryn granite, not Rockland granite. And still, it was interesting to see that there. Moving up to the main floor, there's been a lot of restoration of these rooms over the years, really high ceilings, and they're quite ornate. And finally, we got to this historic room here that we were looking for, that we suspected might have Pritchard Quarry stone on the floor. These dark tile were attractive to us, and that's where we wanted to go to see if that was still in place. Notice these chandeliers and these window arrangements around the corner. This was one of the coinage rooms where they actually they pressed the coins. And this photograph is from this historic structures report. Well, here's the room today. And there's the dark tile. And it turns out, indeed, it is Pritchard Quarry tile, along with Italian white tile marble. And you can see that it's really an interesting veined, well, they called it marble. It's actually a limestone, but it's fractured and re-cemented, which is what causes these dark veins here. You can see it's fairly well fractured. You could call it brecciated, and the fractured zones have fragments of the limestone, and it's re-cemented. We took along a piece of the Pritchard Quarry stone with us and sat it on the quarry tile, and it kind of blends right into the fabric of the limestone tile. So that was cool to see. Anyway, another use in the later years, in 1991, a sculpture artist, went into the quarry with the previous owner, and was able to take quite a few blocks of stone, and he did quite a few sculptures with it. And here's one that's on display in the public space of the city of Los Gatos. Well, the Pritchard Quarry, I call it a boutique quarry because it really isn't that big. The news articles say, oh, it's unlimited volume, inexhaustible, and all kinds of descriptions like that. Those are things that I call geological bullshit. And it's much the same as regular bullshit, but geo bullshit has a distinct mineral odor to it. And so that's how you can tell the difference. At any rate, these news articles kind of allude to that it really wasn't a profitable venture. This one here, the first one, they call it a drab marble quarry. I would dispute that. Has been worked at Colfax, not with profit, however. The material from which is extensively used for mantels, fireplaces, and floor tiles. Not sufficient demand was created for its use to make the venture commercially profitable. The ledge, which is an archaic term for vein, was abandoned and the machinery sold. This was a retrospective report from 1902. We don't know when the last stone was extracted from the quarry for dimension stone. Here's what the quarry looks like today. It's this gray marble, this massive is a term that it's just a solid material, but it has igneous veins through it, intrusive igneous veins of a basaltic type composition that they called diabase. And these intrusions make the quarry stone a problem to get enough solid material without encountering these alien materials in it. Right here is a blast mark, a shatter mark from where they had drilled and inserted dynamite and blasted, or it's probably black powder in the original days. They wouldn't have blasted like this to get the dimension stone because it would have shattered the rock. You can see it just creates a lot of rubble. We discovered in a recent visit that there's a block of stone, a rectangular or a cubical block that appears to be shaped. This is probably one of the last pieces of dimension stone that would have been extracted from the quarry in the early days. They would have had derricks, wooden derricks or hoists to lift this block onto a wagon and hauled off down the wagon road over to Colfax to the railroad station, the freight depot. And then they'd have to transfer it again from the wagon onto the flat cars. So that was really nice to see that block sitting there. Also in the quarry, you can see this drill rod that's sticking out of the rock. And here's a close-up. There's a little slot from where they would be able to wedge a pry bar in there to try to get it out if it got stuck. Well, this one's really stuck. And fortunately for us, it's stuck because it's still there. You can also see fragments of ore cart track rail protruding out of the slope. And we were able to locate the ore cart track grade where they hauled the lime rock from the quarry over to the kiln in later years. Well, 1902 was an important date for the future of the Pritchard Quarry. So what happened was that they realized that this limestone was also good for making lime. And lime was an important commodity, especially in the early days when following the gold rush, buildings tended to burn because they were made out of wood, and a lot of people smoked, and a lot of people drank in the saloons. And when you get those two together, you have buildings burning down. And so they decided, well, let's build our buildings out of brick. Well, they needed lime to make the mortar and the plaster and all those building materials. So a lot of kilns sprung up right after the gold rush occurred in the early 1850s, but they were, at that era, they were very small, what they called batch kilns, where they would load the lime in, stack it up in a stone structure. They would pack it with cordwood. They would fire it off, and let it burn for 2 or 3 days, and then they would cool it down, and then they'd have to unload it again. So it was very long and involved, labor intensive, wood intensive, firewood intensive. And in later days, they had much more sophisticated technology, which we'll look at in a minute. But in 1902, this quarry was looked at as a viable source of lime rock for a kiln. And the railroad was nearby, so it was purchased. Colfax is to have a new industry, which will add materially to the business of that lively town. Well, I live in Colfax, as does Roger. Right now, it's not really lively. So it must have been a really cool place in the early days. A huge limestone quarry, there again, huge. Limestone quarry is to be utilized in manufacturing lime for export. The H.T. Holmes Company of San Francisco has just become the purchaser and is taking steps at once to install a patent lime kiln with a capacity of 20 tons per day. Well, that's a pretty good volume. In April 1902, after a lingering illness, Henry T. Holmes died in San Francisco at age 73. Bad timing. Who is H.T. Holmes? Well, he was a very early Auburn area entrepreneur, and he had a very major influence in the lime manufacturing business in California. He was born Henry Thomas Holmes in Rensselaer County, New York in 1829. He was quite he had that entrepreneurial spirit. Before he even turned 20, he got on a ship in 1849 and went around the Cape to San Francisco. And he then traveled up to Sacramento on a sailing ship. It took him 3 days. Then he went up to the North Fork American River to seek his fortune mining for gold until the winter. So by the early 1850s, he owned a general store in Auburn. As many people that came out to the gold fields found, by the time they got here, they were probably too late to get in on the easy pickings, and they found other endeavors to make a living. And Holmes was one of those. He partnered with William Gwynn, another immigrant to Auburn, and established the first telegraph company linking Auburn to Grass Valley. He married William Gwynn's sister, Mary. Together, they operated an intermittent or bachelor lime kiln, one of those small ones I described, together in Auburn Ravine, and the remnants of that is still there, supposedly. And they built a business selling bricks and lime in Auburn and sold lime to towns all throughout Northern California, as that was a real hot commodity in those days. Well, business was good. He moved his business to Sacramento in 1857, and again in 1865 moved his office to San Francisco and formed a partnership with William Gwynn Incorporated as H.T. Holmes and Company. William Gwynn had operated lime kilns all throughout the northern counties, Auburn, Oroville, El Dorado County as well. In the 1870s, in early 1870s, the Holmes Company began selling lime from Santa Cruz County, which had become the focus of lime manufacturing in the late 1860s and early 1870s. So Holmes actually bought into the lime business in Santa Cruz County in 1871. He formed a partnership with Thomas Bull, who already had a lime kiln operating there. And in 1874, Holmes was instrumental in building the first monitor lime kiln with the upper part of iron and lined with fire brick. William Gwynn held the patent on that, and it was also known as a patent kiln. In 1880, they reorganized into the H.T. Holmes Lime Company after a business split with William Gwynn. And there's a backstory there, but not tonight. In 1885, with high demand for lime, Holmes expanded with new kilns in Felton in Santa Cruz County. And by the late 1890s, Holmes operated kilns in Felton, Kern County, and the Alabaster Lime Kiln in El Dorado County. I should mention here that that lime kiln in El Dorado County was just on the other side of the American River, and the product was shipped by wagon across the American River at Rattlesnake Bar up Penryn, Newcastle Road to Newcastle, and that's where the lime was exported from the railroad at Newcastle. So a lot of the news reports in Placer County list Newcastle as the source of lime, but is actually in El Dorado County. So after 1902, when Holmes died, investors bought the company and reorganized as the Holmes Lime Company. Let me explain how lime is made. You start with lime rock, and it's in the industry, it's called lime rock. It could be limestone or marble. It's calcium carbonate. You add heat and the rock dissociates. I always say disassociates. It's also known as calcining, and calcium carbonate goes to calcium oxide with the release of carbon dioxide, which is a very bad thing nowadays. There's a tremendous reduction in weight and volume. And so calcium oxide is very reactive with water, and it will react with atmospheric moisture and rehydrate. So a lot of times they would pack the product, lime product, in barrels to seal it off. It's called quicklime. To use the lime, they would add water. It's a process called slaking, and it would rehydrate and become a powder. When the lime rock is converted to lime in this matter, it retains the shape of the original rock, and they called it lump lime, but it was very lightweight. So what is a continuous lime kiln? Well, as I mentioned, the batch kilns were very labor intensive, and you had to load them, unload them, and it took a couple days. Continuous kiln means just that. It's a continuous process, 24/7. You load lime in the top of a big silo, and as the rock under gravity goes down this chute, this column, it preheats. There's a firing chamber down at the bottom. The rock heats up. Dissociation occurs where the lime is burned, as they call it. And then as it passes this point in the process, it begins to cool. And then at the bottom, you have this funnel, and the product is extracted at the bottom. Well, there's a brief point where the lime rock actually expands. And so there's a potential for clogging in this portion of the process. And the lime burners, as they were called, were very skilled, and they had their recipes for temperature and the amount of wood they added and how long they would burn the lime. And report in this book, Lime Kiln Legacies, says that a lot of those lime burners took their secrets to the grave. Well, here's what the Monitor lime kiln at Felton looked like. This was a Holmes kiln. It was the contemporary of the kiln at Colfax. And this is a photo from 1908 out of Lime Kiln Legacies, the book, which I regard as the Bible. So you have these two riveted iron stacks, chimneys. Some people called it a Monitor lime kiln because it looked like the Civil War era warship, the Monitor. You know, it had this iron riveted iron stack. But actually, after speaking with Frank Perry, the author of this book, Lime Kiln Legacies, he said that down here in the base, they had these viewing ports or monitor ports where they actually could look into the kiln through the fire brick. And when the lime is burning, it becomes translucent, and they could tell the degree of burning or the stage of burning by looking in these monitor ports down here. And you'll see that. So here we have this shed roof. It has a 2-floor structure. These guys are holding long-handled shovels, kind of like a pizza peel with sides. And they would use these to reach into the ash in the wood firebox to pull out the ash or load the wood. And over here on this side, this is the cordwood. It's actually very long pieces, about 3 or 4 feet long. And the firing chamber was about 4 to 5 feet long. Down at the bottom is the extraction level where that funnel is, and they could either hand unload the lime at the bottom with a wheelbarrow or an ore cart, I suppose. On the other side is also a shed roof with a trellis, or I should say, kind of a trestle structure. And it had a ore cart track that they could wheel this ore cart up to the top between the 2 stacks and load the top on either side with the rock. If you can see that, I guess you can see that those are 6 to 8 inch diameter pieces of lime rock up there in that. Here are some barrels that they were using to pack the lime in to seal it. Here's a set, three monitor lime kilns at Lime Kiln State Park in Monterey County. All you see is the base structure, the stone base, and the fire chamber is all broken out. There's nothing left of that. So here's what a firing chamber looks like. This is on the cover of the book, Lime Kiln Legacies. The firing chamber is above, the ash chamber is below. You had these iron doors that they open and close, and it's lined with fire brick. This is dry stack fire brick here. It's not mortared. So regarding the construction of the Bear River Kiln, a bill of lumber has also been made out for the sheds, shops, bunkhouses for the men, etc. So it would have looked just like that one that I just showed you. A carload of fire brick arrived yesterday for the use of constructing the lime kiln on Bear River. I should mention that in those early days before about 1910, all the fire brick came from Britain and Ireland. It was cheaper to buy fire brick from overseas because they sent it over as ballast in the ships. And to buy the domestic fire brick from, say, the Stockton Fire Brick Company or the other ones in Ione, they paid $5 or $10 more per thousand. And the total price was $30 per thousand. So that was quite an increase. That was 30% higher. And they know where the brick came from because much of the brick is stamped with the manufacturer. The lime works are now near completion. In December 1903, the lime works on Bear River, about 3 miles from Colfax, are nearly completed. The burning kilns have a capacity of from 100 to 125 barrels of lime per day, which equates to about 12 to 15 tons per day. That's pretty respectable volume. It took about 15 cords of wood to fire those per 24 hours. There were 2 kilns, so that's 30 cords per day. They went through a lot of wood. These kilns are being constructed after the latest improved patterns, and when completed will be without an equal on this coast. Now, I would buy that argument because the first monitor kiln of that type was built in 1874 in Santa Cruz County, and now we're at 1903. So that's nearly 30 years of development of that type of kiln, and they probably tweaked the design quite a few times by then. So in 1909, the Holmes Lime Company contracted for a marketing report to investors. This is 6 years later. We don't have a lot of reports on how much or how often that kiln operated, do we?
Not much.
Yeah.
1905, I think there was one report.
Yeah. This was an internal document by an engineer, civil engineer, for the company to distribute to investors. So it makes you wonder why if the lime market was really great, why they needed more investors. But at any rate, so the guy's name was, the engineer's name was James Schuyler. We're going to use Schuyler for this guy. And there are some photos in this report, which are the only photos of the Bear River Kiln that we have. Here is the photo looking west across the Bear River at the hill across. Notice there are no trees. Quite a difference today. Well, they used to be green trees until about a month ago. Now they're brown. So you can see the shed roof, just like the Felton kiln. Big structure over here. Here's the there's a roof line here, and the scaffolding where they would have had the ore cart come over from the right side. Notice this wire coming across here. We believe that's a communications cable. We found cable along the in one of the key locations on the slope that would have allowed communications from the kiln area to another structure. So stone is handled from the quarry into a small ore car, which is hauled up an incline to an elevation above the top of the kilns. So in this picture of the Felton kiln, you can see a slight grade where they would use gravity to roll the ore cart to the top of the kilns for unloading. And it would have been the same at the Bear River Kiln. Here are early photos of the bunkhouses. There are two in this photo. The lime produced is hauled up a steep incline by way, and I'll interject this, by way of an aerial tramway. 1,100 feet long to an elevation of more than 500 feet above the kilns, up to a ridge top where it is dumped into bins and thence hauled in bulk by a 6-horse team to the cars at Colfax. The hoisting power is furnished by a small Pelton water wheel, taking water from a ditch with a drop of 250 feet or thereabouts, quite a bit ahead. Well, here's the photo of the upper tramway station. This was at the top of the ridge, and there was a cableway, an aerial cableway that would have brought the buckets of lime and gone through this opening and dumped them in an ore bin here. And then it would be transferred to a wagon. Actually, there's a report that it was put in rawhide, rawhide baskets is what they call them. And then put into a wagon and hauled to the storage at Colfax.
Do you have an idea where that tower was?
Pardon?
Do you have an idea where that tower was?
Yes. We know precisely where it is.
Oh,
One day. One day. You'll see it one day. So here's the historic photo of hauling lime on Ben Taylor Road to Colfax. We don't believe this was taken at the same time because there's snow on the ground when these guys visited in March. And here there's no snow on the ground. So this is the equivalent of a Getty photo, you know, a file photo of some sort, I think. Here's a remnant of the iron riveted penstock pipe. The current PG&E canal is above. It would have been a ditch, you know, a more primitive, smaller ditch in the day of the kiln operation. But the remnants of the penstock are there. There's another section over here. In 1903, they already have a warehouse at Colfax of large capacity on the line of the Southern Pacific Company, so that there may always be a supply of lime on hand. Another report stated that they kept 100 tons on hand for urgent purchase orders. And Colfax will be the distributing point for the northern part of the state of Nevada. It was also distributed other places in Northern California as well from Colfax. So here's a 1904 view of Colfax. And where did you get up on the tower to take that, Roger?
I wasn't around there.
Oh, okay. So here's the main line going through Colfax in 1905, 1904. There's a train there. Looks like it might be a passenger train or a freight with boxcars. I can't tell. Here's the freight depot. This is the earlier passenger depot over here. There's the Marvin or the Colfax Hotel and Main Street buildings. So we think that one of these storage buildings over here was the warehouse that they were talking about. It's hard to know. Roger is in charge of the Historical Society archives in Colfax, and he says he's never come across anything reporting on the lime storage business there or lime shipment. So it's a mystery. So at this particular time, being that both the Bear River Lime Kiln and the Alabaster Lime Kiln over in El Dorado County were jointly owned by Holmes, the Holmes Lime Company. They were also jointly managed by this guy, Thomas Jones. And he stated, at present, the company is only operating the works on the Bear River 2 miles from Colfax. This is in October 1909. This is after that engineering report. So they went ahead and kept operating the Colfax Lime Kiln during that year. Its works across the American River near Rattlesnake Bar is shut down temporarily, referring to the Alabaster Kiln. So these two kilns worked in conjunction. When one was down for maintenance, the other one operated, and vice versa. In January 1910, Superintendent Jones expects to start the lime kilns at Alabaster Cave next month, which have been closed for a time owing to the small demand for lime. The kilns near Colfax will not be started up until next summer, presumably the summer of 1910, I guess. In May 1910, Jones is getting ready to fire the lime kilns north of Colfax near Bear River. These kilns have not been run since last summer. The kilns at Alabaster are still idle, owing to a temporary falling off in the demand of lime. Well, what also was happening at this time was the production of Portland cement beginning in California in 1905 and 1906 was a disruptive technology, displacing lime for construction uses. Lime was still being used for chemical uses. It was used for all kinds of things, tanning and product purification. They used it in the purification or the processing of sugar beets to make sugar and all kinds of other things. But Portland cement was very superior to lime for construction, mortar, plaster, that kind of thing. And of course, Portland cement was now being put into making concrete, which took place of a lot of brick and stonework. So the downturn in the lime manufacturing market had a major effect on the operation of the economically marginal Bear River lime plant. And then this report, state report in 1947 stated no lime kilns have been operated in the county since 1910, and referring to Placer County. So that looks like that was the end of it. 6 or 7 years, 6 years of operation really for the Bear River lime kiln, which isn't a lot. Okay, so the river fire in August 4th, 6 weeks ago, was a real game changer for our understanding of the importance of this particular kiln, this Bear River lime kiln operation. The wildfire revealed numerous features of the site previously obscured obscured by dense vegetation. So here's the pre-fire scenes. You could see the kiln through the vegetation. It was like coming upon a Mayan pyramid in the jungle. Here is the base, the stone base. This portal houses this iron funnel, riveted iron funnel where the lime product came out the bottom. Here's the plaque commemorating the construction. Here's what it looks today, post-fire. It's quite visible, and you can see it from quite a distance, which I found quite alarming at first because, well, if I can see it, so can everybody else. And we needed to pay attention to this new development. So one thing we couldn't see before were these dry stacked stone walls. This one was built to support the ore cart track grade cross drainage swales. The ore cart track was above here. You couldn't really tell a lot of details about its construction. I could only look at it from the side because out in front here was a forest of poison oak. But after the fire, it's quite a different scene. So this, now I could get up and get really close, and I could determine that this wall is made with traditional dry stone walling techniques. The face stones, these stones here, the building stones, are oriented length in. The long axis of the stone is oriented into the wall or into the slope. The stones are stacked 1 on 2 and 2 on 1, meaning that 1 stone is on top of 2 and 2 stones are on top of 1. That gives it quite a bit more strength. The kiln base itself, I discovered, it just dawned on me after I had a closer look after the fire occurred. This entire base is built with dry stone technique. There is lime mortar here, but it only is used as a veneer or a plaster to cover these joints. But where the plaster has peeled off, you can see that the stones are dry stacked. There's no mortar. And these stones in the base have had a lot of stone shaping. There's a lot of tool marks on these stones. So this is really, really good work. This wall has a batter. It's not vertical. It has a slight lean to it. There's a slight degree of slope vertically. The fire chamber is unique. Again, you have the fire brick arch at the top of the firing chamber, dry stack construction. Here's the ash chamber below. There's still ash in it. The ash grate is what I call a flat arch. It has such a little curvature. You wonder why it stays up, but it has a keystone in here which holds it up, puts pressure on the laterally. This one is unique because it has door hardware. The hinge hardware is still intact, all 4 of these on this firing chamber. Again, the stones surrounding it are dry stacked. As opposed to some of the earlier monitor or continuous kilns, here's one over in El Dorado County. It has a metal lintel that holds the roof of the chamber, firing chamber. All the hardware, door hardware is gone, and it has a metal ash grate. Similarly, this one over in Santa Cruz, this is a historical photo. All the door hardware is gone. It has a metal ash grate. Here's the close-up view of the underside of the dry stacked ash grate arch. And here's the keystone course that holds it up. This one has open slots in the courses of brick so that the ash can slide through. They can use their long shovel to shovel the ash down into the ash chamber below and then shovel it out. So when you look at this picture, here's the arch with the alcove and the iron funnel, the extraction area for the lime. This is mortared brick construction here. It was a permanent structure. They never would have wanted to dismantle it, but this whole section could be dismantled if they wish to do maintenance on the innards of the stack. The stack is, remember, it's brick lined, and so this is all dry stone walling and construction. If they have to do maintenance, replace brick, they can just take it apart and put it back together. Well, that's exactly what the other side appears to have been done. The other side is partially dismantled on one fire chamber. It's totally dismantled on another one. And you can actually look inside and see the inside of the stack. It's all brick, dry stone construction, fire brick. This little hole is one of those monitor ports I described. Here's the back side of the firing chamber. It has this is actually a stacked stone pillar, probably to keep the wood from going too far into the chamber. Here's looking up in the stack. It's lined almost to the top, and you can look down into the cooling area of the kiln. Here are those monitor ports. There's some at different levels, one about a foot above the base, and one about 4 feet, 5 feet up. And we're lucky that one of these is clearly open, because I should have mentioned that this east stack is clogged. Remember I told you there's a potential for clogging? It's clogged. It's toast. This side, the west stack is open. It's not got product in it. So on this port, you can look in there and you can see right into the kiln and right across the chamber to the opposing wall where the fire brick is. That's pretty cool. Well, it wasn't then. So what makes this site special? Well, you can already see where I'm going with this. There was a Pelton wheel to produce electrical power. That's the first reported use of that. There was an aerial tramway to deliver a lime product to the top of the hill, to the wagon road. That's the first report of transferring lime in a aerial tramway. They did transport lime rock in the Santa Cruz area in an aerial tram. On this kiln, the kiln ash grate was dry stack flat arch construction rather than metal. And this kiln may have had double doors like barn doors rather than a single swinging door on the fire chamber and ash chamber, because the hardware was identical on both sides. Evidence suggests that the Bear River lime kiln could have been in the process of maintenance at the time of abandonment. And of course, if they clogged it up, then it would have been in a stage of maintenance. The north-facing fire chambers of both kilns are partially or completely dismantled to access the kiln stacks. The east kiln remains clogged. Lime kiln stone structure and other engineering structures illustrate the reliance on skilled masons for construction. Now, in that Lime Kiln Legacies book, they list a lot of data from the census tracts over there in Santa Cruz County. The predominant source of their skilled workers for lime burners, masons, quarrymen, Western Europe, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, and Britain. Others came from New England, which they'd already been doing that kind of work there as well. This is a fine example of continuous lime kiln technology in California that existed between 1874 and 1910. It's one of the last continuous monitor lime kilns to be built in California, maybe in the US. Remember, Portland cement was being manufactured in the East Coast and throughout the other parts of the country much earlier than California. And so it could have displaced lime much earlier in other areas. Structural features of the quarry and the lime kiln grounds leave a graphic narrative of the operation of the lime manufacturing plant. And as Corinne Beck says, the archaeologist, this lime kiln site is very special. Indeed it is. I'd like to acknowledge our gratitude to Chuck Ginzer. He's the current property owner of the Bear River Quarry and Lime and Kiln Historic Site, for allowing us access to inspect, and there's currently an archaeological work going on there. There has been a preliminary archaeological assessment, and hopefully that will continue soon. The Placer County Archives were helpful in providing research for us, and Corinne Beck and her archaeological colleagues, thanks to them for getting this show on the road with documenting this site. There's a lot more work to do. So with that, I'll take questions, or Roger can too. And Chuck, can you take questions?
Yes, thank you. And if any of the online participants would like to ask a question, I don't see any indication that there are questions. If questions that come from our audience here, you should repeat, because they probably cannot hear them. So questions from our audience.
From Corey Wilkins. Very interesting. Okay, thank you. Yep. Thanks for tuning in, Corey.
Jim, where is it located roughly?
It's two. Okay, the question from the in-house audience is where is it located? And it is 2 miles west of Colfax on the Bear River. One thing I should mention is that I've already had someone ask if we can do a field trip there. The answer is no. It's still an archaeological site. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and any foot traffic in there will probably could cause tampering of the site. So we're going to refrain from that for some time to come. Peter had a question in the audience.
Was there any number on how much actual line came out from the ship? Actual numbers of tonnage or sacks or, you know?
The question was how much volume was produced there? Well, no. To make a long story short, I can tell you though that we have the tailings pile to look at. That's composed of ash and the unburnt lime that they would have extracted with the lime, and it's not that large. Well, it looks like it could be that much. I don't know. It's in the big scheme of things, it's not that large. You know, 6 years of operation, intermittent. In the winter months, they didn't operate because it was too wet. Lime, when it gets wet, goes into an exothermic reaction and it becomes really hot, and you don't want to be around. In the early days, before electricity or other kinds of lighting, you've heard the term limelight. And it was used on the stage, you know, in theatrical productions, and you're in the limelight, right? And so that's probably where that term came from in the very early days, you know, very early. Any other questions? I saw a hand raised. Was that Scott that asked a question earlier, Scott Inman?
Yes, it sure was. I was just curious, Jim, if there are any lime kilns in California or perhaps the West that can be toured.
The question from Scott was, are there any lime kilns in the West that can be toured? Yes, there are some in Santa Cruz County, Lime Kiln State Park in Monterey County in Big Sur. But you saw photos of the one in Big Sur. There's not much there. And similarly, there isn't a lot left in the kilns, the remnants in Santa Cruz County. You know, that's really interesting. Santa Cruz County was huge in the lime business for Northern California, especially San Francisco. It produced, I think, maybe 80%, I'm not sure of the exact number, but it was the dominant source of lime for San Francisco or the Bay Area. And yet there aren't many kilns that are intact. That one I showed you of Felton, that isn't the way it looks today. There isn't much left of it. And so that's what makes this Colfax Bear River lime kiln so unique. I mean, think of the day they abandoned the kiln, probably because, it clogged up maybe, and they said, okay, we're out of here, too much work. Think of them dismantling all the equipment, hauling it out, the lumber as well, leaving the structure, and they rolled a black tarp over the surface of the site, and the fire rolled it back off. Everything, all the structures are still there, and it's untouched because it's been obscured all these decades, 110 years. Yeah.
Do you know where the alabaster kiln was?
Yes. The question is, where was the alabaster kiln? And if you go down Newcastle Road and you cross Auburn Folsom Road, it turns into Rattlesnake Bar, and it's an entrance into the state park, the Folsom State Park, and that goes down to a boat ramp. Well, that's a bridge existed over the American River, and it went over into El Dorado County, and there is a couple of old stone wall remnants of that kiln still over there. Yeah. Any other questions? Do I see any
Is
hands?
that the same stone that they pull out of, they were pulling out of the quarry? At the short line, quarry road, with Morehead Street?
So the question was from Malcolm, is that the same, did you mean same deposit or
Yeah.
same rock? It's not the same rock. It's the same rock, basically. It's calcium carbonate, probably a marble, because the Cool Quarry rock is a marble up there at near Cool. And I think because the Alabaster Cave, it got its name because it was a marble and there was a cave there. It's karst topography, and but it wasn't the same trend or the same lens of rock. It was a different one. Anything else?
Well, thank you, Jim. I don't know if the audience realizes it, but all of you were the first ones to see these fabulous ruins and to hear this story from Jim and Roger. I'm sure we'll hear someday it'll be a park and people will come there to tour, but Chuck, right now you own the property, so yeah.
Yeah.
So very interesting, and thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks Chuck for tuning in, and maybe one day we'll be able to go out and see it.
I am looking forward to that, but in the meantime, please do not visit.
Yeah.
There is too much history there to disturb.
What did I do?
Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you attending our first combination hybrid live and Zoom meeting. We'll assess later how successful this was, but it seemed to work and everyone online was able to see the program. So we appreciate you participating. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.